I made the decision that baffles everyone who knows my resume, my ambitions, my carefully constructed career trajectory that pointed straight towards Singapore like a compass locked on magnetic north. I chose Malaysia, deliberately, eyes wide open, fully aware of what I was turning down and what I was choosing instead. Friends in Singapore think I'm throwing away my potential. Family members make concerned phone calls asking if I'm sure about this. Former colleagues assumed I couldn't make it across the causeway and came crawling back with my tail between my legs. But here's what they don't understand, what nobody understands until they've actually lived in both places long enough to feel the difference in their bones. Singapore might offer more money, more efficiency, more global prestige, but Malaysia offers something infinitely more valuable that no salary can replace. It offers space to breathe, permission to exist without performing, the radical possibility of building a life that feels like yours rather than one that looks impressive on LinkedIn. After years of watching Malaysians flee to Singapore and some quietly return, I've realized that choosing Malaysia isn't settling for less. It's choosing more of what actually matters. Let me start with the most tangible, immediate difference that shapes every single day. Space. Glorious space. The kind Singapore simply cannot offer no matter how much it reclaims from the sea. In Malaysia, my salary goes 3 times further, which means I live in an actual house with a yard where frangipani trees drop their flowers and neighborhood cats nap in afternoon sun. Not a condo unit stacked between strangers, not an HDB flat I waited years to afford, but a house with rooms I can close doors on, with outdoor space where sound dissipates in the air instead of bouncing between concrete walls. I have a car that didn't require taking out a second mortgage for the certificate of entitlement. I can drive 2 hours in any direction and find beaches that aren't managed within an inch of their existence, rainforests that feel genuinely wild, small towns where life moves a human pace. Singapore's excellence comes with compression. Everything optimized and stacked and intensified until there's nowhere to escape the relentless urban density. Malaysia gives you room to spread out, to waste space gloriously, to feel like the country isn't constantly pressing in on you from all sides. The pace of life here allows for something Singapore's efficiency has optimized away, the possibility of unscheduled existence. Mammoth culture isn't just about cheap food. It's about the permission to sit for hours nursing a single teh tart while conversations meander through topics without purpose or conclusion. Nobody rushes you. No cleaner passive-aggressively wipes your table while you're still sitting there. No queue of people shooting irritated looks because you're occupying space inefficiently. Weekends aren't carefully curated itineraries of productivity disguised as leisure. They're lazy mornings that dissolve into afternoon lepak sessions that somehow become evening meals that stretch until midnight. The Malaysian concept of rubber time that used to drive me crazy when I was younger now feels like resistance against a world that demands every moment be optimized, scheduled, and justified. Singapore taught me to be productive. Malaysia taught me to be human. I'll take humanity over productivity any day. The food culture in Malaysia operates at a level Singapore can approximate but never quite replicate. And it's not just about cheaper prices or better hawker stalls. It's about food's role in social fabric, the way entire evenings organize around deciding where to eat, the passionate debates about whose parents' curry laksa is superior, the willingness to drive 45 minutes because someone heard about a stall doing exceptional Hokkien mee. In Singapore, food is excellent but transactional, consumed efficiently at food courts where people eat alone scrolling phones. In Malaysia, food is communion, an excuse to gather, to argue affectionately, to maintain connections across communities and generations. The hawker uncle knows your order and asks about your mother's health. The Capitium serves as unofficial community center, where neighborhood politics get hashed out over breakfast. You can't put this on a spreadsheet or measure it in Michelin stars, but it's the texture that makes life rich rather than just efficient. The multiculturalism here has a depth and authenticity that Singapore's carefully managed diversity can't match, and I'm aware how controversial that statement sounds. Singapore has diversity by policy, by design, by intentional management from the top down. Malaysia has diversity by necessity, by history, by centuries of communities learning to coexist not because the government engineered it, but because survival demanded it. The result feels organic rather than performed. My neighborhood has a Malay family on one side, Chinese retirees on the other, and an Indian family down the street, and we navigate each other's festivals, share food, argue about parking, and exist in genuine relationship rather than multicultural theater. Young Malaysians code switch between languages mid-sentence, not because they took heritage language classes, but because that's the linguistic environment they grew up in. The tensions are real. The inequalities are frustrating, but the everyday lived experience of diversity has a texture that feels authentic rather than managed. Career progression might be slower and salaries lower, but Malaysia offers something Singapore's meritocracy cannot: space for experimentation and failure without your entire existence collapsing. The cost of living cushion means you can take risks, switch careers, start businesses, try creative pursuits, or simply work a job that pays the bills while you figure out what you actually want rather than what looks impressive. In Singapore, the financial pressure is relentless. One wrong move, one failed venture, one period of unemployment, and you're drowning. The safety net is thin, the housing costs are brutal, and the culture valorizes success in such narrow terms that deviation feels like failure. Malaysia's lower stakes paradoxically enable higher ambitions because the downside of failure won't destroy you. I've watched friends start cafes, launch creative studios, write books, pursue passions that would be financial suicide in Singapore but remain viable here. This isn't about lack of ambition. It's about having the breathing room to define success on your own terms. The social pressure in Malaysia exists but operates at a fundamentally different frequency than Singapore's relentless comparison culture. Yes, Annie still asks about your salary, and when you're getting married, yes, there's competition and status anxiety, but it lacks Singapore's suffocating intensity, where every interaction feels like a performance review. In Singapore, casual conversations become resume exchanges, and social gatherings feel like networking events in disguise. People optimize their children, their careers, their investment portfolios, their entire existences for maximum competitive advantage. Malaysia has ambition, but it's tempered by a cultural current that values relationships, family time, and the occasional acknowledgement that maybe there's more to life than climbing ladders. You can be successful without being relentless, comfortable without being wealthy, content without constant optimization. Singapore makes you feel like rest is failure. Malaysia gives you permission to just be. The connection to nature and environment remains possible in Malaysia in ways Singapore's manicured green spaces can't provide. Within an hour of Kuala Lumpur, you could be in actual jungle where hornbills call and the canopy blocks out sky, where rivers run cold and clear, where trails lead to waterfalls that aren't Instagram famous yet. You can dive islands where coral still thrives, hike mountains that challenge you, camp in national parks that feel remote and wild. Singapore has beautiful parks, but they're fundamentally artificial, nature-shaped into submission and controlled. Malaysia's environmental challenges are real and alarming, but the possibility of genuine wildness still exists, the sense that not everything has been optimized and managed and made safe for maximum efficiency. For anyone who needs regular immersion in actual nature rather than curated green spaces, Malaysia offers something essential that Singapore simply cannot. The sense of home and belonging runs deeper here than I expected when I made the decision to stay. In Singapore, I was always a foreign talent, a Malaysian import filling a role until someone decided I wasn't needed anymore. Work passes needed renewal. Permanent residency remained elusive. Citizenship was a fantasy, and every interaction carried the subtle reminder that this wasn't really my country. In Malaysia, with all its frustrations and inequality and corruption and inefficiency, I belong. This is my country, however imperfect, however maddening. I can criticize it without someone suggesting I should leave if I don't like it. I have stake in its future, investment in its trajectory, responsibility for its problems. That sense of ownership, of genuine belonging rather than conditional acceptance, matters more than I realize it would. You can build a career anywhere. You can only build a home where you actually belong. The future feels more open here, paradoxically, despite Singapore's superior infrastructure and planning. Singapore knows exactly what it wants to become and executes that vision with ruthless efficiency, which means your life there follows predictable tracks toward predetermined destinations. Malaysia is messier, more chaotic, genuinely uncertain about its trajectory, which creates space for possibility. The country is still figuring itself out, still arguing about what it wants to be. And that openness means your contributions can actually shape outcomes rather than just following established paths. For people who want to build something rather than just optimize their position within existing structures, Malaysia's uncertainty becomes opportunity. The inefficiency that frustrates you also creates gaps where innovation can flourish, where new ideas find oxygen, where you can actually make a dent rather than just playing a tiny role in a massive predetermined machine. The mental health impact of these lifestyle differences reveals itself over years rather than months. In Singapore, I was successful, well-paid, professionally respected, and quietly miserable in ways I couldn't articulate until I left. The pressure never stopped, the optimization never ended, the performance never relaxed. Every moment felt accountable to some invisible productivity metric. In Malaysia, I earn less, achieve less by external measures, and feel exponentially happier because life has texture beyond work. I have time for long conversations that go nowhere, for hobbies that won't monetize, for friendships that don't advance my career. The Malaysian inefficiency that used to frustrate me now feels like protection against a world that will consume every moment if you let it. Mental health isn't about accessing good therapists, though Malaysia has those too. It's about living in an environment that doesn't require constant therapy because the baseline pressure remains human scale. The financial trade-offs are real, and I won't pretend otherwise. I gave up Singapore's salary for Malaysian wages, which means my savings grow slower, my investment portfolio looks less impressive, and my retirement planning requires more careful management. But the quality of life those wages buy in Malaysia far exceeds what Singapore's salaries bought me across the causeway. I live in a house instead of a box, drive without ruinous car costs, eat incredibly well without calculation, travel regionally whenever I want, employ help without guilt, and still save money. The spreadsheet says I should be in Singapore maximizing income, but spreadsheets don't capture morning coffee on your own balcony, weekend trips to Perhentian Islands that cost less than one Singapore dinner, or the simple radical act of living somewhere you can breathe. Money matters, absolutely, but only up to the point where basic comfort is secured. Beyond that, you're not buying better life. You're buying more expensive life, and those aren't the same thing. Choosing Malaysia over Singapore isn't about lack of ambition or inability to compete or nostalgic sentimentality that values comfort over growth. It's about recognizing that the definition of success exported by global cities like Singapore is narrow, exhausting, and ultimately hollow for many people who achieve it. Malaysia offers an alternative definition. Success measured in life quality rather than just salary figures, in relationships rather than just networks, in belonging rather than just achievement, in space to be human rather than just productive. This doesn't work for everyone. Some people genuinely thrive in Singapore's intensity, find meaning in its meritocracy, and build lives they love within its structures. But for those of us who tried that path and felt something essential withering despite external success, Malaysia offers something rare: permission to define success differently. This is a new channel dedicated to honest conversations about life choices that don't follow conventional wisdom, about choosing quality over prestige, about building lives that feel authentic rather than impressive. If this perspective resonated with you, whether you've made similar choices, you're considering bucking expectations to stay in or return to Malaysia, or you're just tired of narratives that equate Singapore with success and Malaysia with settling, your support helps amplify these alternative stories. Hit that like button if you believe there are multiple valid definitions of a good life. Subscribe for more real talk about choosing Malaysia deliberately, and drop a comment sharing your own story about staying, leaving, or returning. Let's build a community that celebrates the courage it takes to choose a life you actually want rather than the life that looks best on paper, and that recognizes Malaysia's value not as Singapore's consolation prize, but as a genuinely worthy choice on its own terms.